Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice. Welcome to Grow Your Practice Live. And this week we're going to be talking about, I think it's the biggest barrier that we really have in all of private practice. And, it's very easy to get caught up in, there's so many videos, and especially with the election going on right now, there are a lot of videos out there on, interest rates or inflation and, what the Fed is doing and how government is involved with us. And all of those things are true and they're really happening. And there is an employment market crunch going on right now. If you're trying to hire clinicians and the cost of providing services going up, yes, all of that is happening. And if we look at it over the last 20, 25, 30 years, those things have always been happening, right? And the cost of providing service has always gone up, regardless of who's in the White House or who the majority is in Congress. And so inflation is always happening, costs are always going up, and our reimbursements are going down, staying the same. And there's not a lot that you and I as individuals can do about that. There is something that we can control, though. And there's the idea is called a limiting belief. I've seen other people reference it as a self-limiting belief. And I can remember very early on in my private practice career, and I was like, that's for other people, that's not me. But it's been so life-changing looking at how I was thinking, the story I was telling myself, that I think it's a worthwhile share. And I've done a ton of work around this, have worked with coaches and been in lots of very deep sessions around this. And I journal it today. But yeah, the internal story that we're telling ourselves is pretty significant. The first time I ever really started to think about this, I heard a recording by Earl Nightingale, and believe it was in 1957. And that recording was called The Strangest Secret. And I still listen to it to this day. I've shared this with my kids, and basically what Earl Nightingale, with that 35 minute recording, and he did it on the old, I forget what the small records were called, 45s, I think. This thing sold over like 1 million copies, and he really made the recording for like one small insurance sales office. But it was essentially what he said there was most people go through life walking up to a wood stove. The analogy he used was walking up to a wood stove and saying, give me heat and then I'll put in the wood. And he was like, the strangest secret is that it's the opposite way. And that we should be a good, let's call it, gardener of our own self-talk and how we talk to ourselves internally. And I'll give you an example here of some limiting beliefs that I've heard over the years. My business is different. I'm too small. We're just a small business. I'm to fill in the blank. Tall, short, young, old, skinny, fat. It doesn't matter what it is, but I'm to this. So if you find yourself thinking of that, I'm going to share with you an updated 3-step way to work through that. But what that can do is it can greatly influence our behaviors. For example, in 2006, I was trying to hire. So I opened up in 2003. We had a very similar job market as today. It was very difficult to hire. It wasn't for lack of effort. So for 2 or 3 years, I had tried to hire. So it wasn't for lack of effort. I had done direct mail to 5,000 physical therapists in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, West Virginia, DC, Delaware, Maryland, basically Pennsylvania and the 8 surrounding states plus DC. Nobody was coming through, and I was very much stuck. What I did from there is, this was in July of 2006, and I was in my office, and I was on a Sunday night, and I was working on rewriting an ad, and I heard myself say, nobody wants to come work for me because I'm too young at the time. I think it was in my late 20s. And I was like, wow, that's a really weird thing to say. But I could hear myself thinking of it. And it was like the first time I became aware, even though that record had been playing for quite a while. And what I ended up doing from there was saying, okay, what would this look like if we had more clinicians applying than I could possibly hire? And then rewrote the ad that night, and within 90 days hired 3 clinicians. So went from hiring no clinicians in 3 years, had this self-limiting belief, addressed the self-limiting belief, and then radically changed the result that I was getting. Yeah, we use that quite a bit, but yeah, I am too, again, young, old, whatever it is, that is a self-limiting belief. So the 3-step process that I laid out, and I've seen this written a lot of different ways. I know Russell Brunson wrote about it in one of his books. My favorite is Jim Quick, who wrote about this in his book called Limitless. He does call them limiting beliefs. And the step number 1 is just to be aware of it. So if you have an internal conversation going on as a practice owner, like my business is different, which is the most common one that I hear. If you're hearing yourself say that and you're blocking yourself from action or an outcome, you just want to be aware of what you're saying, right? Oh, that person is cash based. I'm insurance based. They don't understand what I'm talking about. The principle's different. My business is different, right? So just be aware of it. Nate, I believe Jim Quick says name it. The second thing that we want to do is we want to go back and just get the facts, right? Like, is the story that we're telling ourselves legit, right? I can remember in July of 2006 looking at my ad and I was like, wow, like this looks just like everybody else's ad, but my situation is way different. I'm a manual therapist. I'm looking for another manual therapist. Somebody believes in manual therapy as much as I do. They're walking into, I have a small practice, right? In terms of size, we're in 2,000 square feet. I'm not, I don't have 500 clinics and I'm hiring a therapist where, they get lost in the mix. My situation is dramatically different. And so let's look at the facts of the situation that they're walking into and what I'm really looking for. The other thing that I noticed in my ad was that previously I had said what I thought people wanted to hear. And once I addressed the self-limiting belief and that went away, then I just start naming exactly what I'm looking for and hiring a clinician. And yeah, so the second thing is get to the facts, or the other thing that you can do is realize when you started telling yourself the false story. So, and that's key as well. The lots of ways I could go with this one. Yeah, I'll give you a weird one that I hit, personal share. I think I've shared this before, maybe, but for years, I had problems talking with grandmothers. And now I know this is crazy because I built our whole practice around this, but this came up as a thing for me that if somebody was a mother or grandmother, like I would, yeah, I really couldn't have a conversation with them. And the internal dialogue that I had is don't want to upset this person, whoever it was. And so I went through this exercise and I was like, wow, when did I start? When did I pick this up? And so like kept going back and I I can remember, and actually this is not far from where I'm sitting right now, but I was at my paternal grandmother's house. Polly was her name. And she passed quite a few years ago now, and she very much loved me. This wasn't like an abusive thing in any way, but I was 4 years old and I just gotten out of the bath and she was dressing me and I put my hand on her shoulders to balance myself. And I just with my thumb, like nicked the front of her neck. And she got very reactive. And I had never seen her like that, but basically exploded on me and talked about how she felt like she was choking and she couldn't have anybody doing it. And it was a pretty big song and dance for quite a few minutes. But I remember like crying and like being really upset. And so anyhow, at that time, I made a decision that I didn't want to make a grandmother upset. And I had carried that with me for way too long, right? I was no longer 4 years old. I was now 26, 27, 28 years old, but still thinking that way. So the second thing is just to go back and realize like, why did I write that belief on my worldview? And the third step is to write a news story, right? So very much like I did with an ability to hire, and yeah, we were sending out 5,000 mailers. I was on all the major forums at the time. I was on running ads on Monster. I was advertising a half page in JMMT. JOSPT was the only employment ads in there at the time. And yeah, so huge output and just not having any inflow changed my limiting belief. And then all of a sudden we get a result is I told myself a new story. And that new story was, what would this look like if we were attracting more high quality therapists than we could possibly hire? Right. And then that's how we ended up hiring 3 in the next 90 days. So step number 1 is be aware, name the limiting belief. I find it's helpful just to journal or just write it down. 2 is look at the facts, figure out when you started telling yourself that story, whatever it is. And the third one is rewrite a new story, right? What would this look like if the opposite were true? Is typically what that's going to look like. All right. So that is a pretty big deal. I'll tell a couple of fun shares in our breakthrough live events. This is one of the first things that I typically talk about on day 1. And I can remember, I forget the owner's last name, but his first name was Daniel. It's from the East Coast here. I believe we were in Denver, which we're heading back to here September 12th through 14th. But I went through this and it happened to hit this one owner really hard. And I was giving specific examples. My business is different is the most common one. I'm too young, whatever it is. But typically we're getting in our own way. Yes, inflation's happening. Yes, reimbursement issues are happening. Yes, insurance companies are rough to work with. Yes, all these other things are happening, real world problems. But at the same time, we tend to limit ourselves and our own success and our own impact in the world, the number of people that we can help. And this one owner got really emotional. He stood up, he had a very nice share, and he was basically telling himself that he was too young, is in a nutshell. And yeah, he got a standing ovation. It was really, really cool. In a similar event, we had like 200, I think this was in January 2020. I believe we were in Dallas, and we had like 220, 240 people, owners in the room. And I went through my business is different and how we work through that. And we got to the end of that, and there was an owner who stood up, and I remember his name, and I won't give it here. And he said, I understand what you're saying, but what you're talking about applies to these other owners. It doesn't apply to me. So he basically just reiterated, my business is different. And it was great. And like everybody just stopped and turned and looked at him. And we talked a little bit later, and he got up and saw the humor in it all. But yeah, it was pretty funny how we can block ourselves from hearing or from implementing a solution because of that with limiting beliefs. Yeah. So that wanted to share that. I do want to talk about what we'll be doing next week is picturing your perfect practice. We're going to talk through that a little bit, like how you can wave a magic wand and just name what it is that you're looking for in the practice. But most people will go to that and they'll end up severely limiting themselves.
Before we continue with this episode, here's a word about our course, Profitability Under Pressure.
What are the 4 ways practice owners are increasing their revenue per visit in today's market? Chad Madden here, introducing you to the Profitability Under Pressure program. This is a 90-day masterclass designed to help you build a financial system in your private practice to improve your revenue per visit and your bottom line profit margin. Many practice owners like you are facing declining reimbursements and increasing operational expenses. It's more expensive to provide care. This makes it harder to maintain the financial health of the practice. The Profitability Under Pressure program compiles the processes working for practice owners today into one system to help you increase profit margins, regain your time, and help more people in your community. With our program, you'll learn how to conduct a profit leak audit, how to create a plan for profit, and how to use the 4 profit levers to increase your revenue. Plus, you'll enjoy a complimentary 90-day trial of our patient demand software and access to our exclusive Insider Circle community. Don't just take my word for it. Hear from practice owners like Lance Gross, who added $1.1 million to his bottom line, and Peg Gray, who got her finances under control after 4 decades in practice, or Jeff Gersh, who saved time by getting the cheat sheet to increase profitability. Don't let this opportunity slip through your fingers. Apply today for the Profitability Under Pressure program and start increasing your profits by $10,000 or more in just 90 days. Click the link below to join the waitlist now. Secure a more stable financial future for your practice. Apply now and join the ranks of successful PT practice owners who have transformed their businesses with our program. Make sure you apply before the General Admission Scholarship deadline. Apply today.
Thank you for listening this far. Now back to the episode.
I was just talking with an owner, And it's an owner who's not breaking even in the practice. And I said, if you could wave a magic wand and have whatever you want, what would that practice look like? And I would say he shot very low. And I said, magic wand, like you can have anything that you want in your practice. You can help as many people as you want. You can gainfully employ as many team members as you want, have an infinite number of locations. What, like you could say, I want to own the largest practice in North America. You could say that, right? And like all the limiting beliefs started to come out. I would say that before you name your goal, before you name your big, hairy, audacious goal, your ideal practice for what you want your practice to look like, it's very important for you to go through this exercise first. I'll open this up for questions. Joanne, I see you hopped on here. John, Eric, Patricia, any questions, comments that you have on limiting beliefs in your own private practice journey?
I just think it's always great to look at, and it's your blind spots. And sometimes other people can help you identify those quicker than you can see for yourself. Don't hesitate to get somebody else involved, and they're usually more than happy to help you find your blind spot.
I would say also I had limiting beliefs for a long, long time, and then finally started to get bold and go with it. And then one thing I realized is my staff members had limited beliefs too. It's not only getting over my limited beliefs, I then had to have like this kind of exercise you're having with us, Chad, with my employees to get them over their same limited beliefs that they were struggling with too. It's pretty powerful.
Also, how'd you do that, John? How did you go through that?
Kind of like what you were doing with just my own, giving them my own experiences of how, as a PT, I was like, well, nobody will ever do this. Nobody will ever pay, an extra money to come see us. Nobody really will come, 3 times a week, or just all that stuff that nobody's going to do that. They won't pay this. They won't. And then once I got over it, and then I'm like, all right, whew, this is awesome. I'm over it. Hey guys, we're going to charge a facility fee. And then I got 13 people looking at me like I'm an alien. Just that same thing, talking to them about it, giving them examples, and giving them time, realizing that it took me 18 years to get over my belief. It was going to take more than 18 minutes to get them on board, with a new idea, just because I got over a self-limiting belief. Just a lot of talking and examples, and exposing myself in front of them too.
Appreciate authentic share there, John. That was great. Eric or Patricia, anything to add there? We caught Eric driving.
No, I don't. I think all the points were spot on. And those limiting beliefs allow you to not move forward, obviously. So you have to really address that first. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Patricia.
Hey, Chad. It's
Hey,
Eric.
Eric.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, driving. So I'm trying to keep both hands on the wheel. But thanks for sharing that story. I didn't know what the topic was going to be today, but I think this is going to be really helpful. And by the way, my wife, Robin, and I will be at the Denver event. So looking forward to being part of that.
Oh, that's great. Look forward to meet you, Eric.
Yeah. But my comment is, apparently when you changed your own self-limiting beliefs as it pertained to hiring, the ads you started to write, they must have sounded different. The wording was different. Your pitch was different. And so, like, what to you was the difference, the before and after, in the way you were like positioning your clinic after you worked through those beliefs? I guess that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, great question, Eric. Before, I was trying, like, if you would read the ad, I would do what most ads do today. And oddly, right after this, I'm going into a training where we're discussing this. So go to any association website, go to wherever ads are for you if you're listening to this, and just look at so look at 3 areas. Headline, what the first component is. Most practices are talking about themselves or their organization. So it's an ad. It's a hiring ad where they're talking about how great they are first. That's an error. And the second thing is they'll list, like, here's the benefits. And I was mimicking everything else that I saw in the market. So red herring effect is you have to do something differentiated. Here's what I did after. So before, I was doing no headline, I would just write like physical therapist, and then I would talk about our practice very briefly, like not a reveal all. And I didn't even include anything about manual therapy. And then I would talk about like benefits and stuff like that. The new thing that I started out writing was just I would put myself out there. So the title got way more specific. And I just found this out yesterday. This was fascinating. It is compliant where you can have 2 ads in the marketplace. One, and in my case, I wanted to do one for new grads because we have a different track there for new grads, and we can have one for a direct access therapist, which implies more experience. In Pennsylvania, it's 2 years, right? So I can have 2 different ads. They're speaking to 2 very different people with different headlines and different messages. I never knew that. So in 2006, what I had done was the headline got very specific around manual therapy, that I was looking for somebody who valued manual therapy, which was not extremely popular in Pennsylvania in 2006. And yeah, that's a whole other story. The next thing, that rather than talk about myself and our practice, shine the light on us, I started asking exactly what I was looking for in a clinician. So, we want somebody who cares about manual therapy, who's in the research, who has an insistent on the main thing we hire now is on insistent on outcomes. So this is probably earlier, maybe like 2010 work when we had another hiring push. I was interviewing our best therapist who produced the best outcomes, who had the best production numbers in terms of patient outcomes. 4 of them in a row said, when I'm working with somebody and they're not getting better, I get nervous or I get nauseous. Oddly, I had that same exact thing when I got out of school for like the first 2 or 3 years. If I was seeing somebody and they were not getting better, like I can still remember many of those patients 25 years later, 24 years later, that like I wasn't able to help with the treatment services I was providing. But that's a driver, right? So now we interview for that. Like, hey, if you're working with somebody and you're seeing them for hip pain and they're not getting better in 2 weeks, what do you do? Like, how do you process that? We want somebody that like really cares and it affects them in their stomach. So we talk about that in our ad, but I get very specific what we're looking for. We also do humble learner, right? We want somebody who's constantly reading articles. They don't perceive that once I graduated college, I'm done learning and I'll take my 30 credits every 2 years. We want somebody who just by nature, they're constantly reading, they're listening to podcasts, they're going to Con Ed events, they're watching videos online, they're just swimming upstream constantly. And then the other one is a team player that, like, when we talk with people that have worked with you in the past, even if this is your first professional role, they will say, I really like working with Yehi, right? Or Eric or whoever it is. I got very specific, so much more detailed headline. I got very specific about what we were looking for in a person. And then the last thing is I painted a clear picture of what they were walking into, right? We have a staff of 4 and I'm one of the 4, right? I'm the therapist. We have a PTA, we have a scheduling receptionist and a billing receptionist, and we're in 2,000 square feet. This is an independent private practice. We have brand new equipment. I just laid it all out there exactly what we were doing. And I continue to update that to today. So it's headline, here's what I'm looking for, here's what you're walking into the situation. And that ad worked way better than what I had been doing before. Does that help, Eric?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you totally blew my whole, oh no, we're different argument out of the water. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Right on. Awesome. Yeah, appreciate that question. It's a great call. Thank you all for being on here and sharing. And next week we'll be talking about going through that magic wand exercise and envisioning what you want your practice to look like. Have a great week, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chad. This was great.
What are the 4 ways practice owners are increasing their revenue per visit in today's market? Chad Madden here, introducing you to the Profitability Under Pressure program. This is a 90-day masterclass designed to help you build a financial system in your private practice to improve your revenue per visit and your bottom line profit margin. Many practice owners like you are facing declining reimbursements and increasing operational expenses. It's more expensive to provide care. This makes it harder to maintain the financial health of the practice. The Profitability Under Pressure program compiles the processes working for practice owners today into one system to help you increase profit margins, regain your time, and help more people in your community. With our program, you'll learn how to conduct a profit leak audit, how to create a plan for profit, and how to use the 4 profit levers to increase your revenue. Plus, you'll enjoy a complimentary 90-day trial of our patient demand software and access to our exclusive Insider Circle community. Don't just take my word for it. Hear from practice owners like Lance Gross, who added $1.1 million to his bottom line, and Peg Gray, who got her finances under control after 4 decades in practice, or Jeff Gersh, who saved time by getting the cheat sheet to increase profitability. Don't let this opportunity slip through your fingers. Apply today for the Profitability Under Pressure program and start increasing your profits by $10,000 or more in just 90 days. Click the link below to join the waitlist now. Secure a more stable financial future for your practice. Apply now and join the ranks of successful PT practice owners who have transformed their businesses with our program. Make sure you apply before the General Admission Scholarship. Apply today.